In this video, we're going to take a look at a question that is going to test your understanding of basic JavaScript concepts. So inside of my code editor, I'll find the events directory. I'll open up the index.js file and the example.html file as well. Now I want to start up my tests really quickly, and I also want to open up this example.html file inside of our browser because we're going to use it for a little bit of a demonstration. In my terminal, I will open up that HTML file by running open events example.html. Notice that if you are on Windows, you probably will get an error when you try to run this command right here, which is totally fine. All you have to do is open up your File Explorer and open the example.html file in your browser. That's all I'm trying to do right now. So here's the HTML file. I'm going to open up my JavaScript console, and we'll come back to this in just a moment. First, let's flip back to the terminal and make sure that our tests are running with just events test.js -- watch. And we got about 5 tests failing right now. All right, so we're all done with the setup. Now it's time to figure out what we're actually being asked here. So if I go back to the index.js file in my code editor, we can read the directions. Our goal is to create an eventing library out of this events class. And the events class should have methods like on, trigger, and off. And then you'll notice that those 3 methods are already defined for us on the class, with a little bit of documentation around each one. This events class right here is meant to serve as a simple eventing library. If you have spent any amount of time with JavaScript, I can just about guarantee you that you've probably used a implementation of an events library already. So if you've ever called a method like on and used it to register some type of click handler or callback or whatever it might be, you have worked with an events library. So our goal in this question is to put together our own custom eventing library. Before we get too hung up on the implementation around any of these methods, just to make sure that the idea behind this eventing library is really clear, I want to give you an example of how this event stuff works by looking at a quick example in our browser. So I'm going to change on over to the example.html file. Inside of here, you'll notice that there is a script tag for jQuery. We've got an h1 tag, a button tag, and a script tag. The jQuery library has an internal eventing library set up inside of it, and we use that internal eventing library to set up different DOM event handlers, like say a click handler. So again, just to make sure that you and I are on the same page with how eventing libraries work, I want to do a little bit of practice here and set up an event handler on our button right here, so that whenever someone clicks on the button, we should console log something out to the terminal. We'll then take a look at 1 or 2 other methods just to make sure that you're really clear on exactly how this eventing stuff works. So if you're not familiar with jQuery, that's totally fine. We'll walk through it step by step. We'll first write a selector to get a reference to the button right here. So we'll say button like so. And then to set up a click event handler, we can say .on, pass in a string of click, and then a callback function to execute. Inside the callback function, I'll add on a console log of hello. Let's save this file and then test it out inside the browser. So back inside the browser, I will refresh the page and then click on the button, and you'll see we get the console log of hello. Well, all right, that's not bad. Clearly, if we call on and then pass in the name of some specific event, our callback function will be invoked whenever this event occurs. Now, something that you might not know immediately about jQuery, we can actually manually trigger events. So we are not limited to actually having to click on a button. We can manually trigger events at any time we wish. So for example, I could again select the button, and then I could manually trigger an event called click. Now I'll save this file again, and then flip over to the browser. And when I refresh the page, you'll notice that the text hello automatically appears. So not only can we register events, but we can also trigger them ourselves. And then the final method that I want to show you here is the off method. So if we select the button again, we can deregister or kind of delete all these event handlers that we've been setting up by calling .off and passing in the event name that we want to disable. Now if we save this and refresh in the browser again, We get the initial console log of hello from where we triggered it. But now if we click the button over here, nothing happens because we turned that event off. Now the very last thing I want to show you is just to make sure it's really, really clear, let's console log that initial event handler. But in this second one, I'm going to change the text to there. So we're going to console log out there, like so. Now if we refresh in the browser again, you'll notice both of those callback functions are executed. All right, so I know I've spent a pretty good amount of time talking about this basic jQuery stuff, but hopefully it starts to expose some of the patterns that we expect to see around an eventing library. Namely, we should be able to register an event with a given event name, in this case, click. We should be able to register multiple different event handlers with one event name. So in both these cases, we registered two different callbacks to the click event name. We should be able to trigger manually all these different event handlers by calling trigger and passing in the event name that we want to trigger. And then finally, we should also be able to disable all the callbacks that are associated with a single event name by calling off and passing in the given event name. So essentially, we want to set up our own custom event library that behaves in the exact same way as this does. To reiterate, we don't really care about setting up any event handlers on a button. There's no click events here. All we really want to do is have the ability to register some event handler, manually trigger it, and then turn them off. And so that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish with this events class right here. I want the ability to register an event, trigger it, and then turn it off. And there's nothing having to do with click events or anything like that. So no need to worry about the DOM or buttons or anything. All right, so hopefully our goal here is pretty clear. Let's take a break right now, and we'll come back in the next section, and I want to lay out a few tips for you on exactly how you can approach this problem.